When many of us hear the term confidential informants, we often think of mobsters wearing a wire to turn in their bosses.
All right, but in reality, as 60 Minutes investigates, they include young college students that were busted for selling small amounts of drugs. And in some cases, there are tragic consequences. Here's a part of the investigation that aired last night.
2 felonies.
This young man, Andrew Sadek, was caught on tape by another confidential informant making 2 sales for a total of $80. Weber has called Sadek in before charging him to present a choice. Agree to work as a CI, wear a wire, and make undercover drug buys from 3 people twice each, or be charged with 2 Class A felonies.
Potentially, the max is 40 years in prison, $40,000 fine. You understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, you're probably not going to get 40 years, but is it a good possibility that you're going to get some prison time? If you don't help yourself out, yeah, there is. Okay. That's probably not a way to start off your young adult life and your career, right?
Sadek took the deal. Weber told us most students do. Part of the agreement he signed, keep the whole thing strictly to himself.
You can't tell anybody you're working for me, for obvious reasons.
An award-winning student of electrical technology, Andrew Sadek did as he was told. Never told any of his close friends about being an informant, never called a lawyer, and didn't breathe a word to his parents, Tammy and John Sadek. The Sadeks are a ranching family, still struggling with the death of their older son in a train accident years earlier, leaving Andrew an only child.
If Andrew had told you that he was thinking of becoming a confidential informant, what do you think your reaction would have been?
Oh, we'd have gotten him a lawyer and told him no.
We've never heard of such a thing, using college students for snitches or whatever you want to call them, stool pigeons, or I don't know, what do you call them,
There's no parent that I know of who would allow their child or want their child to serve as a confidential informant.
To set up a drug deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's too dangerous. No, I wouldn't want my child to do it.
Lance Block is an attorney in Tallahassee, Florida, who opposes using young people caught for relatively minor offenses as confidential informants.
These kids are being recruited to do the most dangerous type of police work. They're going undercover with no background, training, or experience. They haven't been to the police academy.
So they are basically doing the same work as a trained undercover cop?
Absolutely.
Then one night, a few weeks shy of graduation, security cameras snapped these pictures of Sadek walking out of his dorm at 2 a.m. on a Thursday morning. A day and a half later, he had not come back.
We got a call from the campus at about noon on Friday. He went
Still
missing.
completely unaware of their son's work as a confidential informant, Andrew's parents were soon on campus making a public plea for his return.
We love you, and we want you. We need you to come home.
Everything will be okay.
There were searches, prayer vigils, and then 2 months later, the worst news possible. Andrew's body was discovered in a river near the campus, his backpack weighted down with rocks, its straps tied together across his chest.
Did they tell you what the cause of death was?
Gunshot to the head.
A year and a half later, that's about all the Sadeks have been told. No one has been charged in Andrew's death, and the gun that killed him has not been found. Police deny he was involved in any CI operation the night he disappeared and have suggested to his parents that he may have shot himself, a possibility they say is inconceivable. They're convinced their son was murdered as a result of his work as an informant, and they want the confidential recruitment of young offenders as CIs to stop.
It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Stop doing it. Slap their hands, fine them, put them in jail, expel them. I don't care. Stop using our kids to do your jobs.
Powerful reporting. 60 Minutes producers Shari, Finkelstein and Nieves Zuberbuhler are here with us to talk about this. Thanks for being here, both of you. We appreciate
Absolutely.
it. So, Nieves, how did you come across these cases and what motivated you to pursue them?
So when I was doing my master's at NYU, one of my professors was doing an investigation on this. And then I followed up and I kept coming across these cases on the news. And I couldn't believe that there was nothing being done to stop this. And I pitched the story to Shari, and she had no clue that this was going on either.
No clue.
We were saying that, right?
clue.
No idea.
No idea.
But she said, let's do it.
Well, and when we talked to Leslie Stahl, she also was unaware
It's
it was
shocking,
going on.
especially
The
that
scale of it.
parents don't know about this stuff, right?
Well, and especially when you see they're told not to tell anyone. So even if they get into it, they're not going to tell their parents or their friends or anybody what's going on. So that's apparently maybe how this stays under wraps, that this is happening. Shari, I want to touch base about Greg. You guys had another piece that ran, and Greg was somebody who was able to get out because the two people you profiled are two students who were killed, we suspect, and in these very dangerous situations. Greg was able to get out, but it was only because he stopped doing what he was asked of by police that he was then charged.
Well, he was continuing to make buys. This was in a different location in Mississippi, and he was continuing to make buys as a confidential informant, but I guess not fast enough. There, the police, he says, told him he had to make 10 buys from 10 different dealers, and he didn't know 10 drug dealers. And so he was struggling and hating what he was doing, and they would keep putting pressure on him. And at a certain point, he got charged and arrested anyway. He didn't really know why. But as it turns out, his case was dismissed because he had kind of been set up in some way.
And that's the two other cases you profiled. As I said, we have this young gentleman who was killed, but then there was a young woman named Rachel who also, she was, arrested on a small amount of marijuana. And now all of a sudden she's going into these situations where she's being asked to deal ecstasy or, these hardcore drugs from different drug dealers. Yeah,
A gun.
Yeah. So,
She was caught with 5 ounces of marijuana and a few Valium and ecstasy pills. And then the police ended up arranging this, or she ended up arranging with the police, a buy of 1,500 ecstasy pills, an ounce and a half of cocaine,
but she's
and
not
a
trained
gun.
to do that, is she?
No, she had no training.
And the police lost her.
Shari, let's play a little bit of Leslie's interview with Greg. Let's hear what he had to say, and then I'll ask you a question out of it.
It felt like I had a gun to my head.
Have you told them yet that you had nothing to do with this?
They almost convince you that you're guilty. I was just so scared. I was just putty in their hands.
Did you think about the idea that you'd become a snitch?
I mean, I knew what I was signing and I hated it, absolutely. It just made me sick, but what made me more sick was the thought of spending 20 years in prison.
Did you know 10 people you could buy drugs from when you signed that paper?
Absolutely not. But you don't care at the time. When you sign it, it's like, sure, please don't ruin my life.
Shari, it sounds like something that cops do when they issue tickets. They got to hit a quota. So in this case, they're asking this young man to come up with 10 informants. Why was that number so important for the police department?
We don't really know. When we talked to the police department down there, they denied that there was any set number of buys. They said, well, it's a case-by-case basis. It depends what the kid did. It depends what the charges are. But then we talked to different informants, and they kept all telling us they wanted us to do 10. So, critics say that the police want to increase their numbers. They want high arrest numbers. This enables them to go find more and more people. But they denied it. So they certainly didn't give us a reason.
But doesn't that put them in a difficult situation anyway? Because if they have to reach 10 and they don't know 10 drug dealers, then aren't they turning in friends or roommates
they
or
end
people?
Up entrapping their friends. It's entrapment.
Somebody who's just a casual user
who wouldn't be selling weed. They go and say to their frat brother in a frat house, hey, do you have, I don't know how much? And they say, yes, of course. And he sells to his friend, and it ends up that his friend is a CI.
So you talked to somebody who said, no way, I'm not doing this. What happened to him?
So it's interesting. Matt Sander, his case was very similar to Andrew Sadek's, and he was brought in by the same police officer, apparently, and he was told that he was facing 30 years in prison, and he walked away. He didn't accept the deal. He didn't take it, and then he was eventually charged a few months after. He told his mom, he got a lawyer, and they worked out a plea agreement that consisted of 2 years of probation and $800 of court fees.
So a very light sentence,
And
and he was being told 30 years.
Right.
And I didn't see a lawyer in any of those videos. These kids, are they read their rights? Do they know they have the right to an attorney?
They're not read their rights.
They don't have to,
They
right?
don't have to read them their rights, because typically the way this is done is the police bring the kid in before charging them, and they don't arrest them. So they don't have to read them their Miranda rights at that point. They're not interrogating them about the crime they're accused of. So all of those things would trigger a requirement to read them their Miranda rights. But because it's before charging them, not arresting them, not interrogating them about the crime, they don't have to. And so, so often the kids, and with young people, they're like, oh, I don't have enough money to get a lawyer. I'd have to tell my
Scary.
parents. Some people don't want to tell their
You'd be
parents.
terrified.
I mean, when somebody who's 17, 18 years old, they get, they're in college, but, you're still a teenager and you get busted by the cops for drugs. Your first thought is, hey, man, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it because I don't want to be in any more trouble.
And they're told this can make the charges go away. And the police said to us over and over, look, 18 years old, you're an adult. You're old enough to make the decision to use drugs. You're old enough to make the decision to sell drugs. You're an adult. They see it as not a problem. And, when Leslie would go back to them and say, well, but, 18 is pretty young and college kids are young these days. And, an adult's an adult. They're not a kid.
They think that with a charge like this in their records, they won't be able to get a job in the future, that their future is ruined. And then it turns out that Matt Sander, if everything goes smoothly and he does everything right during the probation period, his record would be absolutely clear. Yeah.
So before we let you guys go, any action that's been taken by the authorities in the case of Andrew Sadek and this other case that was in your piece, Rachel Hoffman?
Well, the Andrew Sadek case is an open investigation. It's not been ruled either a murder or a suicide. So it's still being investigated by the authorities. It's been well over a year and a half since he died, but they haven't come to any conclusion. So there's no action taken there. In Florida, there was a law passed called Rachel's Law in Rachel Hoffman's honor to kind of tighten a little bit the restrictions on how the whole confidential informant process works. But what the lawyer and her family wanted got watered down quite a bit because law enforcement really wants there not to be a lot of rules on this. They're trying to pass a new law that would toughen it and, in fact, say that they are required to tell prospective confidential informants that they have a right to a lawyer. But so far, that's just pending. It hasn't passed.
Really fascinating
Just
work. We could talk all day.
Really could. Thank you so much, Shari Finkelstein and Nieves Zuberbuhler. You guys did incredible reporting, as 60 Minutes always does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.